Welcome to Phansi. Just before we start on our little trip through the museum, I want to tell you why we are called the Phansi Ubuntu Art Museum and why to us this collection is so important. Because it talks not about art in general, but the art that people here, the normal people, the indigenous people, created and with which they managed to defeat both colonialism, apartheid, and whatever stresses and strains came on their way. On top of that, they actually absorbed so many things that these new cultures were bringing along, and from all that created an art. From pain created the art and defeated the adversity of the situation. So please, when you look at the art, remember, this is art that talks of love, it talks of healing, it talks of sharing. It is an art that has real power. It's the original art. So now we come to the foundations of the whole thing. Just remember one thing, please, that I'm a white man. I wasn't even born in this country. So all my explanations and everything that I talk about are picked up somewhere. I studied and I picked up. And this is really the fascination of collecting this art, that if you start to go out there into the communities and you pick up one of these things, slowly you find out the souls of that art. You find out what the core of it is. And I want to start with what I understand the core to be. The ancestors basically had 3 commandments that come together in the word Ubuntu. Ubuntu means sharing. Ubuntu means everybody at their best, everybody who has a job from God, a talent, at their best, come together and work together and find solutions together, because that's how you defeat how you defeat the world and its power. Now, those 3 foundation stones which they have is number 1, continuity. We must carry on. That's our job, to be here and to continue. Number 2 is keep order. Because if we're going to meet up together and that sort of thing, somehow or other there has to be order. And number 3, the most important one to us that maybe displaces all the other, is show respect. Now, if we're looking at a symbol of respect, let's take one of the milk pails. This is a piece of work, a work of art. As you can see, it is so simple and so elegant. It is a work of art that shows incredible respect to the tree that was necessary, and it's only a special tree that was useful for milking. It shows respect to the function, and it shows respect to obviously the contents and the sacred animals, which are the cows. Just look at the shapes. Look at the elegance of this. Art was not there. There was no term for art. It is not there to celebrate art or the artists. It is there to celebrate the occasion. And you can see this even carries on later on when people start to do this carving after the missionaries arrived and you had your classes, and it was suddenly allowed to actually replicate human beings and all this sort of thing. You can see how the tree defines the sculpture. That sculpture was always in that tree. And he had the job from God, the gift, to take it out. in allowing people to drift away from the daily problems and the daily issues are the elevation that beer brings you. And I think we all know, it's in the Bible, it's in everywhere else, is this magical liquid that nature produces that lifts you out of the desperation or the troubles of the day into another world. So wherever you are in the world, whether it's in Austria or it's in Germany or it's wherever you are, alcohol as a ceremonial drink is very, very important. Amongst the Zulus, it is what brings the family together. It is a celebration of Ubuntu. It is a celebration of coming of age. Everything is celebrated by brewing beer. And what happens that in big pots, the old women, the women who are closest to the ancestors, basically put in the ingredients, local grains, and then they add their mystery, and slowly, overnight, over time, this starts to foam. And the white foam, the foam of the waves, the foam of eternity, starts to spill over the top. Now, this receptacle that you have to use in order to catch that wonderful stuff has to first of all be wonderful to touch, because it is made out of clay. And the clay is hardened, it is rock that you have made out of the mud of the earth. It has to have a beautiful shape, the shape of a pregnant woman's tummy. And it mustn't slip out of your hands while you're drinking. So, like the milk pail, it has to have things on there, markings on there that stop it slipping. But those markings are different for every family, because those under the ground, those ancestors under the ground, they must recognize that it isn't their honor that you're drinking beer. The other magical thing that actually keeps the communities alive, and not celebrate but keeps them alive every day, are the cattle. Because the cattle belong to the ancestors. We are just there to look after them. So to cover this pot and to allow it to breathe, there's a little hat that goes on top of it. And this hat has to be beautiful. It is made out of grass. It is made out of beautifully stitched, because it has to honor the contents in there. When you're drinking, remember there are rules to drinking, there are rules to everything. Is don't stand up, don't drink alone, and share. Isn't that wonderful? These beer pots developed into an incredible form of art. And we need, in order to make a basket, here's the top, here's the basket, a beer basket. In order to make that, you need two things. You need grass, which allows you to bend into the form of the pot, and you need a palm strip to tie it all together. And look at the patterns you can make with that. Look at the beauty of the whole thing. But you know, one thing is that the colors on here are very dull, because traditionally there was not very much color in Africa at all, or the color that was there only appeared in short intervals. It was a momentary thing. The morning sunrise, the sky, everything, color was something that moved. The flowers came out at a certain time of the year, and the seeds started coming after that. So when these foreigners arrived in the country, they brought color, permanent color. And this was immediately absorbed by the communities, because at last, and the beads came in, everything arrived at the same color, and at the last you could make a beer basket like that out of wire. telephone wire with its most beautiful, beautiful colours that really show how celebratory this is, how amazing it is. And all sorts of new techniques were involved, and you can see how incredibly the work is on these things. It's one of our greatest arts now, is the development of the use of wire, because that celebrates what Africa has always been looking for, is permanent colour. Welcome to the room of identity. Probably the room that actually really interests most people, because it is about people. It is about the identity of all these different groups of Bantu people and Nguni people that arrived in this part of the world from about 1,000 years after Christ, and they settled in these various areas, or arrived in these various areas, but as small chiefdoms. And slowly, actually, as time moved on, as the white governments started really interfering in the structures of the tribes, each tribe developed its own very, very strong identity, using the patterns, the clothes, whatever material was available around there to actually form their own identities. So what we've got here, for instance, and we're entering the room here, and this is the most incredible outfit for the Southern Nguni, Southern Nguni, the Xhosa, and you can see this is a man's outfit. And you can see how incredible the invention of beads was when these people started working. Everything here is basically bought on the markets, or made out of items that are bought on the markets. But the important thing is that it is used in their own context, on the basis of the foundations of Ubuntu, because you use this as the outfit for celebrating. This is the outfit in a completely different area here, near the Durban area, and it's a woman, a married woman, going off to dance, going off to a celebration, and she loves plastic beads because they're so much lighter than the other beads, and she can cover herself top to bottom with beads, and you can see here and all the stuff, the incredible creativity when it comes to making these amazing outfits. The hats, the umbrella, everything, and everything says something to the people who are out there. Every one of these things can be read. Every person here, this is an expression of her being a married woman. And you'll see there, you'll see the skirt that she's got on is from a cow that was slaughtered especially for her, as a sign to the ancestors that she's married now. And it is a cow's leather that actually is then blackened like the beer pot was downstairs, because black is the color of respect. And so, and everything else here shows that she's had children before, shows that she's had this and that, and it's basically a pride of her identity. middle of this magic world of the puppets here. And you know these puppets, we tell the children when they come here, we tell them that we can show them pictures of these puppets when they went to America. And we hear that at night sometimes, when there's nobody looking, when there's a full moon, that these puppets come down from there and they dance. And they dance because they're all the same kind of people. They're all the people of Southern Africa in their beautiful, they dress in their most beautiful outfits. And this lady, she comes from way up the country there, and she is married, and she's had plenty of children because she's wearing this grass belt. And behind it she wears her belt of when she came of age, when she was so pure, as you can see by the whiteness on the belt here. And she's speaking to us about her old love letters. This one says, peace. Isn't that wonderful? What we did earlier on, what I showed you, were Xhosa people right at the beginning. That man who looked so beautiful with his outfit in very subdued colors, but very elegant. He just wants to look tall and incredible. And then we showed you all these various, on the opposite them, all these traditional Zulu people. The people from the north and from the Ngena area. Now, right up north, along the northern part of South Africa, are different people altogether, and which are called the Tsonga Shangaan people. And one of the wonderful things that they do is when they get married, they then wear a cape that advertises to everybody that their status has changed. And look at this one, which is done with safety pins. It has to be beautiful because it is a celebration. And these are puppets that are used for ritual purposes. She's a Christian. She has a little beret on. Behind her is the mother. And the interesting thing about the Ndebele people is that they had their homeland was completely taken over by the Boers. They lost the war against them, and they were then distributed onto the farms. Onto each farmer had a couple of serfs that actually resided on the farm. Now, there was no way that they were going to lose their identity. So they developed a new one. And that identity dealt with communication, getting out the message that here I am on this part of the world, in this corner of the world, and I'm an Ndebele. So everything that they developed worked around that. The first thing was, and remember this, all this doesn't happen very long ago. This happened in the 1840s, 1850s, 1940s, 1950s, that these things actually happened. The war was in the 1880s, and this developed in the 1950s. And one of the ways of doing that was to paint your house in traditional colors, or colors that could speak for a long distance, and people could see when they came past, and you had some flags up, which meant that you were celebrating something, and you could get together. So if you were a Ndebele person and you were walking past there or driving past there in a bus or in a truck, you knew this is where you had to come. The other way to communicate over a long distance is by the most sacred thing of all. And that is, this dancing stick celebrates. It is a telephone pole. Because now the magic voice, your voice, can carry to miles and miles and miles away. And so you've made that, this is the symbol of communication. Isn't that wonderful? Now this is an interesting thing. I've shown you the lady, the married woman, the mother over there with holding up her dancing stick with a telephone on it. This is her daughter, and her daughter's coming of age. And remember, I told you how painting their houses became so important, and how the symbolism of the painted house became so important. So when this girl came of age, and she went to the local celebrations, she would wear a apron like this, which celebrates the house, the inventive house that you made when you painted it. Because very soon they decided that just painting your house in funny colors and that sort of thing, maybe you got very famous for it, but maybe the real expression would be to invent a house, to paint the house that you really like to have onto it. And so this is a house there that she is wearing. She made this with her mother, and she is wearing it, and it has all these lights. You can see all these lights on the roof and hanging down on the floor here and shining down. There's light coming through the windows and all these sort of things. And this is a celebration of architecture. And you can see this is the building. This is the long building. And to me, these are the greatest artists in Southern Africa. And this whole, if you look down here and you see how absorbed they were in the industry around them, because remember in that area there were mines, there were all these sort of things going on. So when they started to celebrate coming of age and the voluptuousness that one comes to when you become a woman that has children, and you can see it here with all these belts on. When you come to that voluptuousness, you actually celebrate it by turning into Michelin Man. But what I forgot to tell you about is this lady behind me. She's a Herero from way up north in Namibia. Because our world of exploration basically includes all these neighboring countries. And we went up, and we've been up there a few times, and I have friends up there, and we've managed to buy some of these outfits from the Herero women. It's what they still wear, and you can see the magic of this, the celebration of color. But what you can also see is that they took over the dress version of the white farmers, the German farmers, the Wilhelminian farmers, and actually made it their own. Now that happened first of all because the first genocide in Southern Africa that was recorded was actually the Kaiser's Germans entering huge wars with the Herero, who owned all the cattle in the country and were actually quite happy by themselves there. But they basically defeated these people and really committed incredible crimes. But nevertheless, this fashion remained. It was divorced, and then you can see how much they celebrated being a woman and being married and having great big hips and that sort of thing. But the memory of the cattle horns is still there. So although nowadays there is nothing there anymore, those horns are still there. They talk of that time. Now I want to talk about these instruments here and the power of music. Now, as I said, in our region, music and dance, you know, the whole idea of art being separated into various categories was not invented in Africa. Art was an expression, well, the word art didn't exist, but basically you expressed yourself through art, what we call art. And in this region, the art dealt with dance and singing, and basically body movements and clapping and stamping and singing together. That was what art was, and dressing yourself in the most beautiful way for the occasion. Now, one of the things that happened when white people started coming in and people started going up to the mines and working in the mines and going back home again, they found new instruments altogether. And the concertina, for instance, which is over there, the squash box, became very, very famous. And out of that whole thing, out of these new instruments that they had, you see the guitars over there, and they formed a new kind of music altogether. It's called Maskandi, and music which actually they retuned these instruments and made them their own. And like everywhere else in the world, that's what you do. You absorb and you then take it and suppress it into your own culture and move ahead from there. And on this side here, there are the big drums. And in some areas, as you get further north, amongst the vendor people and so forth, the drums become very, very, very important. And here they are. This is Ndebele drum, and they are the vendor drums. And these drums have certain functions. They're only played at certain times and so forth. Down here, drums have been accepted now, but basically it's all about the noises that you make. It's about using instruments for more rhythm and for more excitement when you're actually getting married. Now, up there, I want to talk about something that is very, very, very important in these Nguni people, amongst Nguni Bantu people, and that is order. Remember I said order, continuity, order, and respect. So you will have seen in all of these puppets, the most important thing is to be dressed, and everything has to be centralized, everything has to be divided, multiplied, calculated, so the geometric designs are the natural outcomes of that whole thing. And here you see the people who, since 1890 something, we've had rickshaws in Durban. Eventually there were about 19,000 rickshaws in Durban. But the top market, the place where you could really earn some money, was owned by people who came from the royal house. They came from the area of the Zulu royal house. And their patterns would be always shown in all their beadwork. This is all beadwork that you can see over here. And you can see the wonderful geometry that actually makes us, and in fact what Zulu people are very, very famous for in the whole world, is for the amazing geometry of their beadwork. And really everything that they do. So he is there, and in order to show all the other rickshaw pullers that they better not interfere with their private domain over there, they dressed themselves up into the most violent, those Zulu warriors that defeated the British at the Battle of Ntantluwana, not Waterloo, that's the other one. They defeated them there, and they celebrated that defeat to this day. That's what makes a Zulu, is that they defeated the British. And there you are, he reinvented himself there as the ultimate warrior, and he's made this himself into this walking sculpture with horns everywhere, with turkey feathers around the top that you saw in an American magazine or in a book, and right on top, that's the kavadi, what the Indian people used to wear on their shoulders when they celebrate. And so he puts all these things together into a sort of collective outfit, and really makes everybody realize, hey, these are guys that know their terrain, they know their area, and they're those vicious Zulus that defeated the British at that famous battle. Show you something that's really out of our region altogether, but I just love it, and I was able to lay my hands on quite a few of these things. And these are those kuba cloths on the wall here, and they are sacred things in a way, and they represent, each one of them represents a different area. They're made of raffia, which is really a bark of a tree, and they're woven, and really amongst the Zulus and in this southern Bantu area, there's very little weaving going on, certainly not with other than in grass, certain items in grass. So it's really, as you get north, people start actually weaving. And you get these wonderful, wonderful cloths, and you can see all the different patterns and that sort of thing. And I've been thinking that, you know, I wondered, are they writing something? Are these letters, what are they saying here? Because I know that the world, the Paul Klees of this world and all these great artists were so inspired when they saw these things, and you can see how the Bauhaus celebrated some of these patterns. And here they are, and I decided eventually, when I look more carefully, and it's on this side really that one can see it, but that this bark, this raffia palm, it breaks very easily. If it dries out, it splits. So obviously you end up patching it. And the way you patched the thing was you took another little piece and put it over the top. And there's a hole happening over there, and you put another piece on the top. And I was thinking, what happened in those days? That people started saying, just like the people over there in the room of the puppets of identity were saying, you know, why don't we patch in one way and let other people patch in a different way? And out of that grew this system of identifying who you are in life, who you are, which clan you belong to, which people you belong to. So these are really my celebration of that part, and you know, I just think they are just too beautiful. They're body wraps, and they come from the Congo. Welcome to our room of what we call the mystery room, the things that we don't really understand, like the medicine, like all these cycles of life and those sort of things. While we were talking about identity in the room we came from, here we're talking about the mystical things. And one of the mystical things is obviously healing. And it's very much shown here with these mystic people who are in touch with the ancestors and who can tell you about your problems, about the future, maybe tell you what to do or what medicines to take. So let me talk about this one first, which is our area amongst the southern Zulu, northern Zulu. And you can see here from the hair, from this long hair, and you remember I showed it to you on the person who is amongst the Shembe people. This is the traditional long hair of a Sangoma, and you can see it has white beads on there, and those are the beads of the ancestors. White represents purity. White represents, but also represents the foam on the top of the sea and the bones of the ancestors. So when a Sangoma wears white, then it really deals with the fact that he communicates with the ancestors, and the blackness here communicates the respect that he has for them. And basically, these are the people who actually manage to talk to the ancestors, who get messages to the ancestors. It's not a job that you can learn, you have to be called for it. And so they are very, very important in the community to this day, because they offer you the company and the go-to place for when there are things worrying you in your life. They do that first of all by throwing the bones. And the bones is not necessarily just bones, it is anything that they have found that told them spiritually that it wants to be part of a collection of bones. So there might be shells in there might be dominoes in there might be all sorts of things in there. And it's how these things are thrown and how they're then interpreted, which feeds back to the Sangoma, who can then predict something for you or advise you on something or other. So this is our Zulu man here, and the important thing is the swish with which he touches you and touches everything, and that puts the bad spirits away. And these have to be traditionally from a gnu, a wildebeest, because the wildebeest is the animal that's closest to the ancestors. It doesn't really know whether it's of this world or of another world. And you can tell by its nature that it's not an animal that fits in with other animals. So the wildebeest is a very magical animal amongst the Zulus. And then you see today what you wear is, there's normally an animal that identifies with you. You dream about this animal, and then you can buy a cloth, or you find a cloth, or you wear the feathers of that animal, because that's how you're represented to the ancestors. These are two people. These are the Tsonga people. This one is from the northern area near Kruger Park, and this one comes from the Mozambique side of it. And you can see they are completely different. Different colors matter, different ideas matter, but they still have some of the important things. And there, very often, it is white hair and horsehair that actually is important. But you basically see that they're all dressed in mysterious items. And what you can see here is the cowrie beads on top of his head, which really, these little beads represent, these are also in a curve, they're represented by the cowrie beads, which are the beads of fertility, which are traditionally were beads of money, but money and fertility and that seem to go together. It's still like that. Mysticism, the spaces of mysticism, we normally enter the other way. We come around the other way. And we come past, on the right-hand side there, out of view over there, are the coming of age dolls. Because when a young girl becomes of age, when she actually becomes ready for marriage and ready for childbearing, they are given little dolls to aspire to get them for them to start the idea of becoming a mother. They're not dolls in the sense that in the Western world we have a doll that you play with. No, they're symbols that get placed in your house to actually ask the ancestors to assist you in growing up now. So they're very, very different to Western dolls, and they're not dolls that are generally played with, but they are incredible because, again, each district and each area has their own way of doing these dolls. So you get some that are huge, some that are tiny, 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 but they all basically have the same idea behind them, which is to start asking the ancestors to make you into a woman. Then we go into the middle there, which is what you can see over there, and this is about sleeping. That's the headrest, and as you can see, they're amazing shapes. The difference between headrests from our area here, from the Goonies, the northern Goonies and us in KZN, is that they're quite large. Because generally you'll find mostly herders have headrests, and they are for one person, and they're light because you can actually take them when you're walking around. So these are settled headrests, and they're also used as chairs during the day, and they are very, very precious. Only when you get married, when you become in part of that world, do you actually get a headrest, and it's often a wedding gift and so forth. And you can see the shapes, the incredible shapes that are actually invented by people whose gift it is to make headrests. Around the corner you will see the little headrests that are actually worn on the belt by various people in the northern areas, the Tsonga, the Venda and so forth, which are very, very different and small and delicate and quite beautiful as well. Then you see medicine. This is the medicine that actually heals. And in contrast to medicine nowadays in the Western world, this medicine actually has more healing power, psychological healing power, than chemical healing power. So each one of them is intended for a particular illness or worry that you have, and each one of them is more beautiful than the next. And I think when one looks at them carefully, you see how the beadwork's arranged around them. They're beautiful calabashes. The stoppers are normally quite exciting and beautiful little sculptures. When you just hold one of them, and they're all fat and round and in a beautiful shape that you want to pick up, and you actually think there must be something very precious inside. Downstairs in the basement. This is where the name Phansi originates. Phansi in Zulu means down, but it also means the upper Phansi. Those who are down there are basically, those are the ancestors. So we like to speak carefully when we're down here, because we think we're near the ancestors here. And I want to start with the meat platters, because as I told you, the important things that are the foundation of the traditional Zulu and Ubuntu people are the showing of respect. So once you've eaten meat, and these are meat platters, now you know that every time a cow is killed, it is a sacrifice. You don't just kill for the sake of killing, you sacrifice an animal, and you have to have a very good reason why you're doing that, because you're taking a life of something that belongs to your ancestors. Communal eating is communal, and basically this is the platter, this is the more sort of recent one, and normally they get very big when you have big communities, but on this wall we've shown the smaller ones, and here's the surface where you're eating. And this is the back of it, because when you've finished eating, when you've finished and you've cleaned your plate, you hang it on the wall of your home, back to front. And the back, as you can see, has to be black, because it's saying thank you very much to the ancestors. It has to have the symbols, these little knobs called warts, are the knobs of a particular clan. Here's a different one, there's a different one, there's a different one. there's a different one. Each clan has its own, that's how you write. That is how your way you negotiate and you talk to people. And look at the beauty of all these things. Look at the beauty of this. Look at the beauty of that. You know, the whole purpose is always to make something that is aesthetically very beautiful and very simple and really very personal. So then we go down here, and one of the things I forgot to tell you about upstairs, or I might have mentioned, was the fertility dolls. Those sacred dolls that are actually used to ask the ancestors to start to bring about this change in your daughter as she grows up. This is the traditional one from the Msinga area. And you see it represents a little person. A little person that actually looks like a Sangoma. And she has all the colors of that tribal area where she is from. She has the hair of the Sangoma, and she doesn't have a face. She has the white beads of the Sangoma around there, and it would be an insult to actually put a face in it, because that meant you've breathing life into the whole thing. So you see how beautiful it is. This would then be put down somewhere, but at the same time you actually have to survive and live. So somebody comes along and says, hey, that's a beautiful thing, why don't you make me one? So you will make one, and that sort of thing. And this is the whole new art form, arrives out of that over here, and you can see how it develops into amazing sculptural and cloth sculptures and all sorts of things. And here's a man, somebody in bed, and wonderful, wonderful creative things grow out of it as they grow out of beadwork and everything else that you touch. On that side there are the pipes, because smoking is another one of those mystical things, because it lifts you up and takes you somewhere. So the pipes have become very, very important, both for tobacco, which has been here in this part of Africa from the days of the arrival of the Portuguese and America. Then the Zulus by tradition take snuff. They also smoke, but snuff is the one that lifts you, and that's so you'll see different snuff containers, different snuff, different smoking pipes, the long pipes, where what was used amongst Xhosa people. And then here are weird pipes and all sorts of things. At the horizontal level here is very old beadwork. Now, very old beadwork basically for us means 1850. You don't go back much further than that. That's when people first arrived here and started trading beads for ivory, for labor, for all sorts of things. Up in the north, obviously, that happened much earlier, and even down in the Cape, it happened much earlier. But in this big region here in the north, middle north, this is the kind of beadwork. And you will see already, right from the beginning, they start each little group, and over the top of the hill and the other side, or in that valley down there, they started making different combinations of beads. And it starts with just winding beads, because beads were bought basically on a string. So you wound them around a core of grass, and then made your pattern, which identified you as belonging to something. Now we are right down in the middle, right at the core of the Phansi Museum, where we started. With this 30 years ago, we started the museum, and here, first as an art studio, and then developing into the museum. And basically what we're doing down here now is to talk about the craft and the expression of the craft and the expression of basically what craft produces and the message of craft. And most people come here because they are in love with beadwork. They love with the beauty of beads and the beauty of the designs. But when we come here, we show them that it's what they are saying that is the most important thing. And here we're amongst those Ndebeles that I was talking to you about upstairs. And to me, they are really, we call them the postmodern Ndebele, because they were grabbing everything that they could see and making it their own. They were living next to white settlers, next to the Afrikaners on those farms, and they were seeing what they did and they were seeing how they used things, and they took the ideas and made them their own. And this is when we talked about upstairs, about the patterns, how they painted their buildings first and then exploded onto an art form where everything has to do with designing houses. To the last room of the museum. We've tried to show you a little bit of everything. Remember, we call ourselves a feel-good museum. We are not there to teach you the intricacies of the culture, of that sort of thing. We want you to absorb it as you go through. And I'm only one of the guides in this outfit here. And really, I started the whole thing, I fell in love with it all, and I've been collecting for 60 years now, together with my wife originally, and then eventually, after she died, going out on my own and so forth, and carrying, and all this lovely stuff, well, most of it are items that I brought together over that period. Here we are in the room, celebrating. It's really like a home. Over there, that's the umsamo. If you come in the traditional home, although it may well be round, but it could even work here, you enter centrally on the far end, and opposite you, right on the opposite, in the darkest corner of the house, is the place where the food is kept and where the ancestors are worshipped. And that we've tried to do the same thing here. And all these pots here, most of the pots here you will see are black, because they are beer pots. And they're pots from all over southern Africa. And you can see them on the walls. You'll see them all with their different markings over there to show where they come from, who they belong to. There you see the very large ones, which are the brewing and storage pots at the end there. And all these are made from clay. They're fired in the ground for a couple of hours, and basically are fired once into a bisque firing like this one, and then they're fired again later to give them the black color when they're carbonized and that sort of thing, and they're burnished in between, and then they're rubbed with fat and so forth until they get this absolute shine that will make the ancestors proud. In different areas you will find they use paint to glorify the beauty of these things, but this is a typical southern northern Nguni way of dealing with the whole thing. It also applies to the Pondoland area and to Swaziland, the celebration of the beer pot as being a black a sign of respect that goes with it. So to close up, thank you very much for coming on this tour. Please remember, if you want to know the real background to this thing, come when we are open, when Phumzile, our manager, Phumzile Nkosi, can take you around, or Kitive, or Mpo. They know so much more about how you, because they come from this culture. I am myself, I'm a pure observer from the outside, and I'm telling you what I've learned over the years by being so inquisitive, by wanting to know more and more and more. But some of the rituals and some of these things are actually things that are in the flesh of people, like culture. Culture is actually something that you don't know where it is, but somehow or other it's in your genes and it's in your veins and it absorbs you totally. this is what we have here. So please come find out about it. We do run courses. We have this the Africademy, which is joined to us, where we teach people about who want to know more about that. We have a research center, we have an innovation center, we have all sorts, we have outreach classes, all sorts of things. If you want to know more, if you want to know how to use the language here, how the stories over here, how to use them in what you are trying to create, what you are trying to make, or what we are trying to do here is to get people to accept the beauty and the quality and the wisdom of this part of Africa. Thank you.